Hey everyone, thank you for joining episode 17 of The Green Life. Today's guest is a veteran of health. His name is Dr. John McDougall. Dr. McDougall has been around the block for a few years and he really has taken health to the next level. He was practicing medicine like most doctors do, prescribing medicine, operating, and then he just realized that he wasn't getting anybody better, and that made him feel like he wasn't practicing medicine the way that he should have. This is how he went back to school and started really studying to learn how to heal people, and nutrition, of course, was the first thing that he learned. So Dr. McDougall's national recognition as a nutrition expert earned him a position in the Great Nutrition Debate 2000 presented by the USDA. He's a board-certified internist. He's the author of 13 national best-selling books and co-founder of the McDougall program, a program that is completely free or can be accessed with support by the team for a fee. He has dedicated over 50 years to medicine, and so his mission is to make people better through diet and lifestyle, and he calls his practice diet medicine. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Dr. McDougall. Dr. McDougall, thank you so much for joining The Green Life today. Such an honor to have you here.
Well, I tell you, I'm always looking for a good audience, and it sounds like you have a very responsive group of people that are listening to you, and let's see if we can change some minds, have people look at things a little bit differently. You know, I really like to talk from the point of view of helping you understand things so that you can see it. You know, you don't have to believe me. Even though you could take the trouble to search me out, to go look at my work. I usually put the scientific references with my work, so you can see whether or not I quoted the particular authors and scientific studies correctly. And I've been at this for a long time, so I appreciate the challenge. And like I say, I hope I open a few eyes. So I'm a medical doctor.
Yeah, I'm sure you will, and your experience is unbelievable. So, in fact, why don't you take us through not your CV per se, but your journey into medicine, so that people can get to know how you got here.
Thank you. Yeah, I did. I was raised in the state of Michigan, and I went to medical school at Michigan State University and met my wife, Mary, in my senior year of medical school, which, of course, was a world-changing experience because she and I had been on this journey together ever since. And that was over 50 years ago. And after medical school, what we decided to do is we decided to move to Hawaii. Can you imagine why? And we had a great time there. I took a surgical residency and I didn't want to leave. And what happened was, at the end of my internship, I got a job as a sugar plantation doctor. You have no idea what a sugar plantation doctor is. No. But to get a clue, I took care of people who worked on a sugar plantation and in Honoka'a, Hawaii. And they tended the fields and harvested sugar, and that was my job, taking care of 5,000 people. And I did that for 3 years, and it changed my life dramatically. For one thing, I found out what kind of doctor I really was. I had the idea that I was going to make medical miracles like Ben Casey, Dr. Kildare, and Marcus Welby, and I was going to do all this wonderful stuff. What I found out was that I was a lousy doctor because my patients did not get well. Those who had chronic diseases, and I should have known, when you call it chronic, they're not going to get well. Chronic obesity, chronic heart disease, chronic diabetes, chronic constipation. They're just plain simple not going to get well by definition. I did some good things. I caught 100 babies. I sewed up a lot of lacerations, did a few brain surgeries in the middle of the night. But, my overwhelming impression was that I was a terrible doctor. So that was one thing I learned during the 3 years there. And that caused me to go back into training, where I went to Johns Burns School of Medicine in Honolulu, and I trained to be a board-certified internist, which I am. That tells you that I know just pretty much everything that every other internist medical doctor knows. But the important thing that I learned was how to eat. I ate the rich American diet with enthusiasm, and I suffered terribly. I have a health history that would get your attention, to say the least. I had a massive stroke at 18. I used to weigh 90 pounds more than I weigh now. And I was in really, really bad shape. And fortunately, I saved myself by what I discovered during these 3 years as a sugar plantation doctor between let's see, it was 1973 and 1976. What I observed was that people ate differently. I was taking care of first, second, third, and fourth generation people from the Philippines, Japan, China, Korea. First generation people, they were raised in their native land. They learned a diet of, in this case, primarily rice. And they moved to the big island of Hawaii to start a new life. And, they took a bride and they had children. And the children, they were influenced by Western eating. So they ate a little bit more rich food, a little less rice, a little more meat, a little more milk, a little more junk. And they got a little fatter and sicker. And by the time you got to the third generation, I was looking at people. I was taking care of people. I remember I took care of 5,000 people. I was taking care of people who were as sick and as overweight as any population I've ever taken care of. They were in horrible shape. Now consider, this is 3 generations, maybe 4 generations of people. Their genes did not change. The work environment did not change. What changed was their food. They went from rice and vegetables, being trim, healthy, no breast cancer, no prostate cancer, no heart disease, no constipation, no rheumatoid arthritis, no multiple sclerosis. That was my first generation, living on rice and vegetables, no dairy, very little meat at all. To a population where these were epidemic diseases like they are with other Americans and Europeans. These are epidemic heart disease and obesity, et cetera, et cetera. So the only thing that changed was their food. And I went back into training and I learned how to practice really good medicine as a board certified internist. I spent a few years, paying the bills by taking care of all kinds of medical problems. But as of 1986, I stopped doing that. I was only taking care of people through a practice that I would label best as diet therapy. Now, I know, strange term for you. Diet therapy is where you use diet to treat people. And I started doing that back in 86, and I've been doing it ever since. Left Hawaii after about 15 years and moved to California, where I took a job in one of the most predominant, most well-reputationed hospitals in the United States. It was at St. Helena Hospital in the Napa Valley, California. And there I ran a program, a live-in residential program for 16 years. We published scientific data out of there showing that we reduced all kinds of risk factors like cholesterol and blood pressure and weight and blood sugar, et cetera. But the important thing is that people, they felt better and they got control of their health. And there's every bit of evidence that says they lived longer. So after 16 years as a doctor in a major hospital in California, I left. I took a position with my own company, which was a resort in Santa Rosa, California. We ran our program as a resort. Medical care, as we do now, medical care. We took care of people. We took them off their medications, we just like regular doctors, except for one thing. Well, 2 things. One, we didn't treat people incorrectly when it came to drug therapy. Way overtreated people are. And the second thing is we changed the major cause of illness that caused people to be on medications and to be ill, to be overweight. We fixed the food. So I did that for 18 years, and then we had the COVID pandemic, and that changed everything. And it changed our practice to the better. We now run a 12-day telemedicine, telehealth program where we take care of people all over the world. We take care of people in Portugal, in Spain, in Germany, in China, but all over the world. And once a month, we gather these people together and we teach them. And we take care of them medically. And as I say, we take them off their medications when necessary, which is most of the time. And we get them to regain their health by, showing them things. And they become believers because they can see it. They can see it. It just makes sense, and they get better. But that's what we do now. You can find out about that telemedicine program, telehealth program, if you go to the website, which is, I'm sure you'll be told many times, drmcdougall.com. Anyway, that's kind of the history. That's where I'm at right now. I'm well represented on YouTube, and you can find hundreds of lectures I've given on YouTube. And so if you like what you hear, spend a little time, enter the name McDougall, and I bet you, I think you'll be impressed at least by my my ability to endure. I have a lot of information up there. Hopefully you'll be impressed by my medical knowledge and the practicality of my advice. But that's kind of how it got going. I run a practice where we have 3 major scientific studies, which are uncontested to date. 2 of them were done independent of me. 1 we did it on our own participants. And what we showed is on an examination of 1,703 people, nobody excluded, that we were able to cause them to lose about 22 pounds in a week.
Wow.
Yeah, and let's see, that would be a 10 days, average weight loss, 22 pounds, eating as much as they want. Oh, excuse me, I gave that wrong. It's in 7 days, it's 3.1 pounds. Let me take that back. Let me get my year study and my 7-day study straightened out. So 3.1 pounds in 7 days, that was the average weight loss. Eating as much as they wanted, as often as they wanted, the foods they really, really loved. I know that may be hard for you to believe, but you'll become a believer if you get into the program. So that's what we accomplished in 7 days, uncontested. And then there was an independent study done of our work by Oregon Health and Science University, which is the medical school in Portland, Oregon, USA. And what they found after 1 year, okay, there's where the 1 year study comes in, is the average weight loss was about 20 pounds. And I think the most exciting thing was that the 85% of the people were compliant for a year. Excuse me, you can't get people to take drugs at that compliancy rate. 85%. And the reason is because they saw such dramatic results. You know, not only their lab tests, but their physical well-being. And they love the food, and they should, because the food is, basically the food human beings should like. And then there was another independent study done on a community practice in New Zealand, totally independent of us, just like the university study was totally independent of us, except for the education. And in New Zealand, I didn't even find out about the study until it was completed and published, but they used our diet. And they found similar. They found a 25-pound weight loss in a year.
Wow.
And they bragged that it's the greatest weight loss of any program out there. And it probably is. 25-pound weight loss. The other advantages that we got, you should expect. Okay, this is not one of those things where this is the best case scenario. Don't expect these results as you hear from most of the weight loss programs out there, because most people don't get the results. Well, you should expect to get the results that I'm telling you about. Average weight loss in 7 days is 3.1 pounds. Average drop in cholesterol in 7 days is 22 points. Those are milligrams per deciliter. Divide by 38 to make international units. That was the average drop in cholesterol in 7 days. Let's see, blood sugars improved as far as an overall group goes. Here's one. We got 90% of people to reduce or stop their medications, particularly their diabetic and their high blood pressure medications. This is published. Nobody's contested this. This is true.
Yeah.
Anyway,
true.
we reduced insulin levels, made people feel better, just a whole bunch of things that they got better. And that's the research that supports it. Now let me tell you about what the diet is, and then we'll go on to some questions if you don't mind.
I just actually, if I can interrupt you for a minute, I like that there is this connection with, that resounding narrative that comes up. First of all, doctors don't learn about nutrition in school, and you had to go back to study to actually learn about that part, and then you started seeing results. And this is why a lot of doctors can only mask the symptoms that people have, but cannot cure the disease because they don't go to the root cause. So right. I love that you went back and actually really felt like you could do better, because that's what good medicine is all about. And
you think so?
Yeah, I definitely. And I learned really early on. I mean, you said you did a lot of operations in the middle of the night and you delivered babies. And I think when medicine is fantastic when it comes to, the right there, like emergency, you have to get to it, otherwise one can just bleed to death. But when it comes to chronic disease, it definitely is failing, and it becomes this management of sickness rather than healthcare. And doctors like you have actually shown that that's the case. So that's really powerful. I personally went, plant-based almost 10 years ago. and I would never go back. I cannot even believe that I was eating flesh before. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Because my health got better, and I fell off the wagon for 2 years. I didn't leave the vegan diet, but I wasn't as clean as I normally were because I was going through a stressful period, and immediately I felt the effects on my body. So that's how powerful food is. So I started healing again from last year. It's unbelievable. I could never, like, nobody can ever context how powerful food is. And to the point that you made about people not really enjoying the diet and staying on it, it's because they're nourished. And when the difference between your program, for what I read and looked at, is that it's all about these micronutrients coming into your body, feeding the cells and mitochondria, cellular level, and not these fad diets where there is this reduction and the sense that you're missing out. And that's powerful because people don't want to miss out, right? Nobody wants to. Abundance comes from really having this wonderful food. So you did a really good job there. I think it's fantastic. So yes, now we should go into what the program is all about and what people actually eat, because that's the fun part.
Well, it is. If it wasn't sustainable, then it wouldn't be worthwhile teaching. And most of the programs out there are not sustainable. You have the portion controlled programs, like diets. They're called diets. So you restrict food, and they're not sustainable because you're always wanting. In fact, you're in pain quite often from hunger. And the only other approach that's been of any effectiveness for short term has been the make yourself sick diets. And these are the low carb diets, the Atkins kind of diet. They make you ill. And when you become ill, you lose your appetite. But again, you can't stay ill for a long period of time. The only sustainable diet there is the diet for human beings. Well, how do you figure out what that is? Well, you can spend time in the scientific research like I did, but you can just look around. You as an audience, you have experiences. You studied history, you studied geography. Look around. What you find is that all large, successful populations of people throughout all of verifiable human history have attained the bulk of their calories from starch. You're going to have to learn to like this word because it's the correct word. There's a journal and it's published out of Germany. It's called Starch. Starch is the correct word. And I want to give you some examples, and I know you'll be able to relate to these. The Native American, 10, 12,000 years ago, we can document them living on potatoes. A little later on, their diet became, and the diet of Central America and Mexico became a diet based on corn. The Aztecs and the Mayans are known as the people of the corn. If you look a little further south, you look at the Andes in South America, you find that the Incas, we're talking about populations that are around for tens of thousands of years. The Incas lived on potatoes, and except when they went to battle, and then because potatoes are heavy, they switched to quinoa. Another very easy to carry starch. If you let's look at the hot spot in the world today. Let's look at the Middle East and Ukraine. This part of the world is known as the breadbasket of the world. This is where the wheat, the barley, and the other grains come from. And why did they call it the breadbasket of the world? They didn't call it the pork chop basket of the world, did they? No, it's the breadbasket of the world. And then I think one that everybody can relate to is the Far East. Vietnam, Cambodia, Japan, China. What do you think about as far as the diet of these people? Come on now. It's still basically rice. And before 1980, 90% of the food came from rice before 1980. Of course, things are rapidly changing in the world today. And unless you look carefully and quickly, or you're a person of history, you won't see this because, now in China, obesity is a problem. 12% of the Chinese people are frankly diabetic. They have diabetes, and half of them are pre-diabetic. So around the world, people have learned the rich Western diet with enthusiasm. They've adopted to it. And you look at various countries and 40% of the people are obese. Another 40% are overweight. That means 80% of the population is definably sick.
Mm.
Oh, well, how could so many people be ill? We must be doing something terribly wrong. Stop and think about it. What could be terribly wrong that happened within the past 50 years? The past 50 years, maybe 100 years, but certainly the past 50 years, what's happened is because of the wealth generated due to improved technology and the harnessing of fossil fuels, we've made it so everybody, pretty much, certainly half the world has done it, can eat like kings and queens of old. And that's the problem. That's why people are sick, is they eat like aristocrats of the past. And again, look at your history, your art, your literature. What do the kings and queens, the aristocrats, look like?
They didn't look very good.
They're obese, sitting on their throne with a gout in their feet. So just to summarize for you, the diet that 99.999% of people who walk this earth have thrived on is a diet based on various starches, okay? And they had some fruits and vegetables, and they weren't vegan, but they could have been and they should have been, but they weren't. But I guess that's not really the point. The point is that we have to change individuals to obtain the bulk of their calories as starch. We have to change the whole planet that way. Mm. And my patients, who come to me, some are pretty much dying from breast cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and so on. They don't deserve a compromise. So I teach them a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables and no animal products and no added oils. Oils are toxic.
Yeah, let's talk about oils, because I think that that's one of the most conflicting information out there. You have doctors that truly endorse it and say it's needed, it's beneficial for you, right, and others like you that say completely waste of calories and also not very good for you. Can you take us through the oils?
Well, it's toxic. You need some oil, and that oil is present in rice and potatoes and corn. And corn, I've heard of it. Corn has oil. It's present in the natural foods. In that form, it's safe. But when you extract the oil, and it always has to be extracted, it's never free in nature. Mm. When you extract the oil from its original corn or oats or whatever you extract it from, what you do is you leave behind everything else, all the protein, vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, fibers, everything else is left. And you have this isolated, concentrated oil. And at best, it's medicinal. At worst, it's toxic. One of the things that you ought to firmly implant in your mind, in fact, you may use it as a mantra. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. I don't care whether it's good fat, bad fat, olive fat, pig fat. You're going to wear it because that is the easiest thing for the body to do with the fat. It moves from your fork and spoon to your belly, to your thigh, to your buttocks. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. Plan on it. Why would the body do anything else? Fat is the metabolic dollar. It's supposed to be stored for the day when no food's available, which hasn't happened in a long time. It's starting to happen around the world, but it hasn't happened in a long time. So we're in this constant storage mode situation where we're storing up for the day when no food's available. Ladies and gentlemen, look around you. Look around you. By the way, these people, even the big ones, will only last about 60 to 90 days. So there's really not worth it doing that. Anyway, that's the obvious thing you can look at. The other thing is that oils have pharmacologic properties. Your omega-3 fats, they cause you to bleed. They suppress the immune system. Your omega-6 fats, they'll damage the arteries. All fats promote cancer. And when you're overweight, when you have a high-fat diet, you develop type 2 diabetes. Mm. And, start looking at it, start studying it. You'll see it. It's obvious, but you can start from the fact that the people around you are in big trouble. You can see it. They're sick. They've got bags full of pills they're taking. Yeah. It's not supposed to be that way. And they're overweight and they're dying early. And there's got to be a reason, and the reason's the food. It's the food. Now, but I want to tell people what they should be thinking about eating, because sometimes starch is unfamiliar with people these days. They really don't have a concept. Starches are high calories, high carbohydrate calorie foods that are obtained from plants. Only plants make starch. And we have what we call underground storage organs, where the plants store the sugar underground. And the underground storage organs are things like potatoes and sweet potatoes and and bulbs and corms and, things like that. And they're complete, by the way. You can live on underground storage organs as the sole source of nutrients, except for maybe B12, which we may not get into this time. Above ground storage organs are things that are grown above the ground, and they are seeds like grains and legumes. Okay, they grow above the ground, and they cannot supply all of your nutrients. You have to add a tiny bit, a tiny bit, of, say, a fruit like orange or a little bit of flower out of broccoli, and then you complete the pattern for nutritional excellence for above ground storage organs. But what we're talking about in terms of meals are things like cold and hot cereals, oatmeal for breakfast, and waffles and pancakes for breakfast, and there's all kinds of different dishes that you can think of that you're familiar with for breakfast. You go on to lunch and dinner, you have things like spaghetti and marinara sauce, mushu vegetables over rice, bean burritos. That's one of my favorite is bean burritos. And, they're all starch based. How much starch? Come on now, listen carefully. 90% of the food that you see on your plate should be starch. You don't have to measure it. You don't have to have a dietitian around. Just kind of look at your plate, kind of eyeball. You ought to see a predominance of starch, and about 90% starch, because that's what people ate. 99.99% of people, that's what they ate. Is 90% of their food came from corn or potatoes or sweet potatoes or rice or wheat. And you have to, if you want to emulate their health, which is, no heart disease and no diabetes and no obesity and strong athletics. I don't know whether you guys follow sports or not, but the marathon and triathlon winners are from places like Ethiopia and Kenya, where 80% of their diet comes from corn. That's why they win. Like the Boston Marathon, which was just completed about a month ago. There were two, the man and the woman who won the marathon were from Kenya. So, if you want to be the best athlete possible, what you do is you eat the diet that powers people to win. The people at the back of the line, they're the ones that follow the Atkins diet, the low carb diets. So, and of course, those are the diets that give you hemorrhoids and ulcers and multiple sclerosis and heart disease and breast cancer and colon cancer. And you just get a whole pile of stuff when you pick the wrong food.
Absolutely.
It's the food.
We saw it in the Game Changers as well. All the athletes that are, powered by plants, and how much they saw their performance increase and get better, and they felt better. And they had to kind of fight against the dietitians that are hired by even the Olympic committee for every team that keep on drilling about dairy and meat, where they were like, no, we don't need this. Look at how much better we're doing without it. So of course, it takes education to change your mind and to understand, because we've been really conditioned to think in a certain way since our birth, right? If when we stopped breastfeeding, then it was cow's milk that was put in our mouth. So it's not like we're actually weaning out of dairy, of our mom's dairy, our mom's milk, and moving on to things that are more normal for us. We were really continuing an abnormal diet. So I think a lot of people just can't really fathom this, that they've been taught the wrong thing. And also, again, advertising, it's everywhere. Government guidelines are terribly misleading. So it's, you're fighting against the system. You have to really be open-minded to want to learn something new.
Well, you say something new, but it's actually something old. We go back in the scientific literature, and you discover things like there have been no cases of protein deficiency described on any natural diet. It doesn't exist. Yet, the number one selling nutrient in the marketplace is protein, but there's never been a case of protein deficiency or amino acid deficiency. Doesn't exist on any natural diet. And likewise, there's no such thing as calcium deficiency. Yet the dairy industry has pushed it to the point where you believe that calcium is necessary from cow's milk. It's just crazy. And then the newest fad is omega-3 fats. Omega-3 fats are when I say omega-3 fat, you think fish.
Yeah.
But no fish has ever made an omega-3 fat. No animal has. Only plants can make omega-3 fats. And so how does a fish get its omega-3 fats? It eats algae and seaweed. Why don't you just go eat the plants? And then you can get it safely, and you can stop the slaughter of our oceans. Good grief. 90% of the fish are gone from the time I was a little boy. Excuse me, it's a disaster. It's an emergency. You want to talk about the climate for a minute?
Yeah, let's talk about climate. Let's bring in that.
Well, that's my new passion. I've been a doctor for more than half a century. And I've been practicing diet therapy. In other words, you use diet to treat problems. And that's where you cure them, because the wrong diet causes the diseases. I've been practicing diet therapy for 46 years. And with the birth of my first grandson in 2004, my interest changed. And that changed to trying to help save the planet. We're in big trouble. This is an emergency, folks. I mean, if you're not up to speed on the fact this is an emergency, then you're not paying attention, or you got some personal reasons to block such information. So this is an emergency we're in, and it's such a serious emergency that it's not going to be solved even by stopping all fossil fuels. It's too late. We've got too much carbon dioxide buildup in the atmosphere. So what we have to do, and the experts agree on this, is we have to change our diets worldwide. And this starts with every individual. What the research shows is, first of all, that over half of the global warming gases, the greenhouse gases, are produced by the animal agriculture business. The other exciting research is that you have the opportunity, you as an individual, to reduce your contribution of global warming gases, greenhouse gases, by somewhere, well, let's just say it, by as much as 80% with a change in diet. That means 80% overnight. Can you imagine if 7 billion people change their diet? They can. My intention is for them to do it. If you go visit a new website that I built, actually my foundation, my 501c3 built it. It's called McDougall, it's www.McDougallFoundation.org. You'll see a very tight, interesting discussion on how we can help save the planet. We're in big trouble. We have to do everything possible, and that means we have to change what people eat worldwide. I know it's hard. People don't want to give up their meat, et cetera. Well, you don't want to have your children have no future either. You don't want to burn up in a forest fire. You don't want to drown in a flood. You have your house washed away. And, there are lots of things you don't want to do, but, eating oatmeal for breakfast should not be a problem. Eating bean burritos and pasta marinara sauce and mushy vegetable over rice for lunch and dinner, it should not be a problem. These are great tasting foods. Mm-hmm. In fact, the meat, the poultry, the fish are rather disgusting. I mean, try a nice big slice of pig butt or cow butt. It's pretty disgusting. You got to cover it up with steak sauce to get it down. Heavy salt. Same thing with dairy. Dairy's disgusting unless you add sugar to it or salt to it. When I was a young doctor, I couldn't get my kidney patients to eat saltless butter and saltless cheese. They said it tastes like a big glob of fat, doc. You got to adulterate it with salt and sugar and spice to get people to eat these animal parts and animal secretions. They're not, why they're disgusting? It's because they're not the diet for human beings.
Yeah.
Meat is not disgusting to a cat. Okay, they have taste buds on the tip of their tongue. They're called amino-tasting taste buds, in other words, for proteins. They have no taste buds for carbohydrate, no taste buds for sugar. So you throw a slab of meat down in front of your cat, naturally it eats it because that's its food. But you throw a big slab of raw beef down in front of your friends or your family, what do you think? They're not going to eat it. It's not their food. But you feed them some rice or corn or potatoes, they'll just go crazy about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Can I ask you about this? So obviously it's a big topic, global warming. How do you feel about these biotech companies coming out with those fake meats, right, to replace what people want to eat, which is
one of the big problems is that reaffirms that meat is an important part of the diet. Because you have to make a fake meat, so it must be important. Mm-hmm. And that, I think that's a bad message. I don't think that that's where we should be going. Second of all, it's costly to make these products. You can't feed the world on these new burgers or new hot dogs or you just can't. So technology will never get to the point where we can grow enough food to feed the billions of people that are out there. But we can, and we have, and we will feed billions of people on starches like rice, potatoes. Potatoes are my favorite. Corn. These are foods that have fed billions of people in the past for thousands of years. They're people food. Anyway, I think it's a mistake. Yeah, you can come back to me and you can say, well, if I go to fake meat, I'm helping the animals. Yeah, you are. Yeah, you're helping the environment. Sure, you are. Yeah, but it's not really a sustainable approach. And again, it reaffirms that meat is a part of the human diet because we have to make fake instead of giving up the real. You don't have to make fake. You just give up the real. Get all the protein, vitamins, minerals, essential. All you give up is the battle of the bulge and a lifetime of sickness when you give up these animal foods. Try it. I run a 10, 12-day program. It's free on my website, drmcdougall.com. It's a different website than my environmental website, my diet climate website, which is mcdougallfoundation.org. So you go to drmcdougall.com and you'll find 500-800 recipes that are free. You'll find a whole diet plan. In fact, we moved that diet plan. Mary and I gave it to the foundation. And you can find that diet plan for free on the diet climate website, mcdougallfoundation.org. But everything you need is absolutely free. There's no disguise. There's no hard work in getting it. If you go to drmcdougall.com and you'll find all the research. You can spend some time on YouTube too. As I say, I've populated YouTube with my voice to the point where, fortunately I have some followers who think I'm pretty good, but otherwise I think I've probably done too much.
No, it's good. People need to see more and more. It takes people 7 times, I think, to get a message. So if you have 700 times more, that's good. I agree with you about those fake meats. I at the beginning of my journey, I think I was being quite politically correct in the sense that I didn't want to have confrontation with people about, not liking these foods that people call bridges. But to me, I wrote an article at the time that was called "We Need to Be Less Egocentric and More Ecocentric," and that was published in the Veg Fest in London. In the magazine, and it came back again this year because we keep on wanting to, what we want because, I don't want to give up something. But in the meantime, we're not getting healthier with these products anyway, because one thing I looked at, even these fake meats, is that they contain a lot of oil and a lot of, especially coconut oil, palm oil, to kind of let them, have that consistency and then bleed like meat. I don't know why it's appealing to anybody. Anything bleed on your plate, but
they do that, make it even taste like blood.
And they make it taste like blood, which begs the question, what the heck is in there? But it's really about being the best that we can. Now, another thing that I think you might agree on is if we don't eat a diet that promotes our health, then we can be as vegan as we want, but taking a lot of drugs still hinders the planet. Because now, first of all, if you're an animal lover, a lot of medicine is tested on animals. If you want to save the planet, well, we pee out our drugs into the sea, into the rivers, and that's not good for nature. So overall, we're not really helping anyone or the planet, not animals or the planet, when we are not healthy, right?
Well, certainly that's a problem. I mean, when you give up your drugs, as I told you, we get 90% of people to reduce or stop their medications within 7 days. So you want to dispose of your drugs in an environmentally safe way. That you need to be taken to a pharmacy where they have they put the leftover medication of toxic waste dump. That's how they need to be disposed of, not poured down the toilet.
Hmm.
Bring them to the pharmacy. Most pharmacies have these capacities to take the leftover drugs and put them in toxic waste refuse.
Yeah, that's a good tip, because I think a lot of people do shove them out down the toilet. Like, you're killing the animals that drink this and us in the process. And the other thing,
we have so many things that we can do that should be done. So many things that are frustrating. But the one thing that you folks all have an opportunity to do is to choose what you eat at the dinner table. And that, of course, puts a big vote as to how politics goes and how industry goes. Industry is going to make what you demand. So by exercising this easy maneuver, which is to switch off your plate the animal foods and instead put starch. Don't put green and yellow vegetables. You're going to walk away thinking, I can't do this. I can't live on kale and broccoli and cauliflower. Well, I don't know anybody that can. And by pushing just a whole food plant-based diet, sometimes people are confused. This is a starch. That's the proper term, starch-based diet. Rice, corn, potatoes, etc. You guys are getting it. And you taste it, make it taste the way you want. In our program, we use a little salt and a little sugar on the surface of the food. We use preferred spices. Like, for example, if you're from Italy, you'll want to use Italian spices. If you're from Asia, there are probably particular spices from your area of Asia that you fell in love with when you were a child. And that way you can make it so easy to transition. It's nothing. And it's everything in terms of your personal health and in terms of the influence you make as far as the planet's health goes.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's true. Spices make up everything. I'm addicted to smoked paprika. I love it so much, and they make it in Spain, which is next door. So I'm like, yes, winning. I do use a little bit of nutritional yeast, which makes that cheesy flavor comfortable. There's so many things that one can use. Even if even things that are like cocoa aminos that might not be the healthiest, but like used in moderation can really give a little bit of a oomph to the plates. There's so many ways that food can taste amazing.
So this must be something new to me. Cocoa aminos. That would be like a protein that tastes like coconut.
No, it's it's the salty, but it's salty. I don't actually know how they made it. I never looked at it. But Bragg's, you're familiar with Bragg's aminos, is exactly the same.
Sure. We know Bragg's aminos. And ladies and gentlemen, if you try this and you don't find it enjoyable, it's the salt.
Yeah.
Just put some salt on the surface of the food. It'll change it just immediately. All of a sudden, it'll become delicious. It's the salt that you're missing. That's the primary flavor that's absent when you change your diet. And is it harmful to eat a high salt diet? Well, there's some argument that it is, and certainly that's the position I take, is that you should work towards making your salt intake moderate to minimal. But you could do that. You've got plenty of time. It takes about 2 weeks to adjust to a new salt flavor. So after you adjust to a starch-based meal plan without added oil, after you make that adjustment, then work on lowering the salt intake. And same thing with simple sugar. I don't think it really makes any difference as far as your health goes, whether or not you add a teaspoon of sugar to your oatmeal in the morning. That's 16 calories. You might eat 3,000 calories a day. That's 16 calories. That's not going to make a difference in your health, but it could make a lot of difference as to whether you eat that oatmeal or not. And again, if you want to be perfect, no added salt, no added sugar is probably the way to go. But then again, I could argue that it's not. But let's just leave it on the table as that. You need to just starch, rice, corn, potatoes, sweet potatoes, breads, pastas. Oh, there's thousands of different starches that you can pick from. That's the diet of the human being.
Yeah, it is. Can I ask you your opinion? Do you think that fat can trigger cravings? And I'm asking because I've noticed that since I stopped having oils, I don't have cravings for sugary things anymore. And I thought, what a correlation is that? Have you come across that?
Oh, when you make this kind of change, there's so many different things are changing at the same time. The reason that they use the fat is not because people like fat. I can't get people to take and consume tablespoons of lard. I can't even get anybody to drink a cup of olive oil. They won't do it. They throw up. The reason the fats are used is they act as a vehicle to get the salt to stick to the French fries and potato chips, to get the sugar to stick to the donuts, and to get the spice to stick to the salad leaves. See, all you have to do is figure out how to get salt, sugar, and spice on your food without the destructive oil, because you don't like the oil anyways. And there's so many things that you change at the same time by giving up the oil that you taste the food. You don't have greasy face. You don't have the acne. You don't. It's just a major impact on the body to eat oil, including your health food, flaxseed oil. It's not good for you.
How do you feel about nuts and seeds?
Well, I think nuts and seeds as a whole food probably work out pretty well, especially if you're trying to gain weight. Nuts and seeds are not unhealthy. They're just very rich. They're dense in fat. They're about 90% fat. And so they have lots of calories. And what happens is a lot of people who are vegan end up being overweight. I call them fat vegans. And they're out there trying to save the planet and trying to save animals. But people look at them and go, my goodness, that's what happens to you when you go on this vegan diet. You're 80, 100 pounds overweight. So if you want to be trim, you got to get the nuts and seeds out of your diet. If you want to gain some weight, you put them in your diet. But what's happened to nuts and seeds is they've taken the shells away. And then they take and they put them in bottles. And you just inhale them. It used to be you had to work hard to get nuts and seeds out of the shells. And of course, the coconut has the hardest shell of all, doesn't it? That should tell you something.
Yeah, and it's also the fattest one.
So, I don't think you ought to think of them as unhealthy. Just they're not in your best interest if you're trying to lose weight. And of course, weight is related to so many things, including type 2 diabetes. You develop type 2 diabetes because of an excess of fat, animal or vegetable.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's so we can say that it depends on the person's status and what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like I said, I'm the kind of person who probably could gain a couple of pounds, and nuts and seeds in my diet would be a welcome thing. But most people aren't that way. Most people need to desperately lose weight.
Yeah.
They don't know how. I just look at people, beautiful people, hiding all that beauty under an inch of fat. Excuse me. I've often wondered, people buy these expensive cars to be more attractive. They, thousands of dollars worth of makeup and hair supplies to be more attractive. And yet you hardly even notice buried under all that fat. Good grief, ladies and gentlemen, you want to look better. You want to be more attractive. Let's fix the problem. Being overweight is not attractive. I don't think so. Not in our society. So I would suggest, I mean, after all, that's why you belong to all these weight loss programs, why you try all these diets all the time, because you don't think so either. The simple way to develop permanent trimness and permanent health is to follow the diet that trim, healthy people eat. And I think the easiest thing for you to relate to is your impression of Asians. It used to be before World War II that there was nobody in Asia who was overweight. The first cases of type 2 diabetes in China started in 1980 when they changed their diet. So you can remember, even today, I mean, largely the Asian population lives on rice, more rice. I know they're changing rapidly. And largely the Asian population are pictured as trim people, except for the rich, the business people, the government officials.
Yeah.
Then they start packing on the pork. And there must be a saying, packing on the pork. From my lips to my hip.
Yeah. From your lips to your hip. We saw that in India. And a lot of Indians that we met did say that it kind of identifies with your wealth. So if you're overweight, it's because you can eat more. If you're underweight or lean, it means you are poor. which
Yeah.
of course we understand is not great, especially in a country where there has been a very big development, especially economically, because of all the multinationals bringing back office work there. And the people that now have this disposable income, instead of spending it on their traditional food, which is mostly plant-based, albeit some fried
Mhm.
content, it's they've gone towards the Western diet. So now India is one of the countries with most diabetes. I did research. This was years ago now, but even Coca-Cola in I mean, I know it's plant-based. Well, it's not plant-based. Sorry, it's vegan. But even Coca-Cola in India would have more sugar than Coca-Cola, say, in Europe. So they are getting these people addicted and addicted. I think, and that's another thing that we have to consider. Industry has made it so people have become addicted to food, and at the same time, when they look at people that are lean, there is almost this unreachable thought that you have to be a model to be lean. And so that kind of creates a little bit of body dysmorphia as well, because people now are thinking that's not how we'll ever look unless I become anorexic, which again is so out of whack, because actually when we feed our body properly, the way that our bodies are meant to eat, any extra weight falls off, really, because our body wants to be trim. We want to be efficient in how we produce our energy, our consume our energy. So I think there is like a little bit of the psychological side to it, where we are actually addicted to our food, you know?
What we need to do is we need to develop a trend for the truth.
Mm.
There is a diet for human beings, just like there's a diet for dogs and diet for snakes and a diet for cats and a diet for birds that allows them to look, feel, and function their best. Everybody ought to know what the diet is for a human being. You ought to learn that in grade school. There's
Yeah.
something that should be taught in your family. But the truth of the matter is if you look around, you find all kinds of opinions on what you should be eating, from no carbohydrates, all meat, all grease, to a diet that's 100% vegan. And when there's such disparity in opinion, it tells you that we haven't settled on what the right diet is. If you visit my program, what you'll understand is what I believe is the human diet, what allows people to look, feel, and function their best. If you don't agree with me, fine. Go find the diet that is for humans. You're obliged to do it. Your family wants this. Your community needs this. You need to be a spokesman for the diet that's best for human beings. And again, I think we're pretty darn close.
Yeah. Well, I think, I have seen a few doctors that push the meat diet. And again, any diet can be advantageous at the short term, right? See, if people are overweight because they eat a lot of processed food and then they cut all the processed food out, oh my gosh, I'm losing weight, I feel better. But long term, that's when the problem comes. And we don't have those,
Well,
the people that are,
we do have long-term results on people who follow these low-carb, high-protein, high-cholesterol, meat-based diets. I can show you four, and there are only four, large meta-analysis where they've taken to synthesize all the literature. And they all show that these low-carb diets increase your risk of dying and increase your risk of having various cardiovascular diseases like heart attacks. So the science isn't confused. The public is confused because industry spins the message in the direction of their products. It's just natural.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't think this is a conspiracy. Nobody's out to hurt your family. They're just out to make money. That's all. You're just standing in the way. It's all about money. It's about money. Occasionally egos, but mostly money.
Yeah, no, it is. I agree with you. But what I was saying is that I don't know if I just never realized there was a whole only meat diet that I've seen pushed in the last 5 years. So now I don't know if that ever was, but if there, I know the low carb diet existed, I've seen it, but only because I've seen doctors talking about the only meat as in you can't eat plants because they can hurt you, which I mean, I don't know how anybody can actually say that in public and be okay with it, but so I don't know, do people actually, have they done it long term, like 5 years and more, and actually be like, oh, we still performing great like a lion,
No,
or are they actually
no,
sick now?
no, they're actually sick now. And I told you about the four studies.
Mm.
Four studies on cardiovascular disease and dying on these low carb diets. There aren't any others out there. There are no diets that say no studies that say the opposite. But let me give you another example of people who, as a population, lived on virtually the Atkins diet for 7 months of the year.
Mm.
They lived on a diet that was almost exclusively meat. And these people are the Inuits, the Eskimos. If you study the Inuit Eskimo, and I'm not talking about bodies that have been exhumed from ice flows that were 500 years old. What you find is the Inuit Eskimo, and today it's even worse, the Inuit Eskimo has severe atherosclerosis. Yeah. And they also have severe osteoporosis because of their diet of whale and seal and fish. But they had to have that diet living in those circumstances. You can't live on the diet I recommend in that kind of cold. But the modern day Inuit Eskimo is a whole different story. They don't live in an igloo. They don't go out and hunt their meals. The modern person who lives in that cold environment, what's cold, getting warmer, cold environment, they live in a heated house in a heated SUV they drive around in. And the way that when they go fishing, what they do is they fish with a green lure. In other words, they drive through a fast food restaurant and they hand the person at the window a green lure, and that's how they fish. And they're some of the sickest people on the planet, the Inuit Eskimos are. Well over half of them are obese, not just overweight. Horrible diabetes, horrible heart disease. It's really a shame. In fact, the least privileged people in the world, when they become westernized, as long as they can't afford the rich food, they're okay. But when they become westernized, they become some of the fattest, sickest people around, like the Native American in the United States, and the people from India. India, 30 years ago, the country of India, they told us that the middle class was as sick as the upper class. It only was the lower class that maintained relatively good health. Mm. So they've changed from just the rich people being overweight and sick to an economic level where now we have two classes of people that are obese, overweight, sick.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely. I mean, we noticed when we went there how people were not even buying street food. And again, I'm not saying it's healthy when it's fried, but it was vegetables versus going into the malls now and buying McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken, which is not part of their diet really originally. So you can see more and more obesity, more and more diabetes, and it's sad really, because they had it right where they can see in the villages how they eat. They grow their crops, they eat the rice, mostly rice, then some very cheap vegetables that they have, things like shushu or cabbage, some kind of cabbage, and they were healthy, versus going now into the city and becoming more industrialized, and with that, as we said, the diet. So we need to take lessons from people that live in more modest conditions without driving to the supermarket to get a prepared, prepackaged food that is convenient. And also, I guess we don't really understand the joy of cooking anymore, because our life has become so easy, so difficult in a way, so busy, and we want everything to be convenient. So we've ever seen these movies where like people put, like Back to the Future, they put that pizza in the oven and it rehydrated to become full size, but it was really small. I mean, we are going towards these kind of anti-foods that are just convenient, but they're not foods really, because people don't know how to cook. It's crazy.
Well, that could change. It's pretty easy to cook this kind of food.
Yeah.
It just takes enough motivation, and we're not there yet. We're not there as a world. I used to believe that if people saw the answer to their serious heart disease and diabetes and rheumatoid arthritis, if they saw an option to get well, to get healthy, that they'd run for it. That's not been the case. My attraction to people has been modest at best. in my private practice as well as my worldwide tours to try and teach people. Modest at best. Most people, they just somehow or another can't see the relevance to it. And it's the same thing with my concern about the planet. It's not become an immediate issue for them, but it will soon. I just hope that we're out at the head of the parade to guide people in the right direction when they do ask the question, what can I eat? Not just what can I eat to save the planet, what can I eat?
Yeah.
Because they're going to be asking that question pretty soon. And I hope I'm there to tell them you can live on potatoes and water alone. And you might have to. What I'd like to see is I'd like to see people make this change before things got that bad. I'd like to see the change being made under our control, under our direction. And we have a capacity to do that, particularly this day and age. The whole country of Denmark changed their diet during World War I to basically a vegan diet because they didn't want to starve to death during the British blockade of the Germans. So for 3-4 years, they ate the foods that the animals were eating. They became nearly vegan, 3 million of them. And back then, World War I, 1914 to 1918, what happened is at that time, you could communicate with a telegraph machine. They had few radios at that time. They had no television. And what do we have today for communication? Everybody. I mean, like 88% of the population of this planet has a device right in their hand. So we have the potential for instantaneous communication of the truth. I just hope it happens sooner than later because we can change. We could change the world. If 3 million Danes can change their diet to prevent starvation, and by the way, they enjoyed the best health that the people in Denmark have ever enjoyed. They had a 34% reduction in disease during that time of World War I. And by the way, they very few died of Spanish flu either. And whereas around them, the countries in Europe, they were dying of epidemic of the Spanish flu. So, we're having a situation where we had this COVID and its variants virus that's scaring people around the world. Well, the people who end up in the hospital, end up on ventilators, end up dying are the ones that are sick from the rich Western diet. They're the ones with obesity, with diabetes, with heart disease, with kidney failure. Healthy people rarely, it happens, but rarely end up with major complications. They have an asymptomatic infection or a mild infection that they don't have to get extra help for. So, we got a whole bunch of things that we're talking about here. We're talking about chronic diseases, like diabetes and high blood pressure and heart disease and constipation and arthritis and chronic diseases. We can cure those by changing to the same diet that prevents you from developing serious complications of viral infections. And hey, you're going to have a new variant every few months. So plan on the infection staying. And your defense is to make yourself and your family as healthy as possible. So we've got chronic disease, we've got acute infections, and we've got climate change. Okay? Now we may develop some vaccines, fine. We haven't yet, but we may develop some drugs that make a positive difference, fine. But you're not going to stop the climate. Okay? It's not negotiable. Unless you introduce the last playing card we have. And that's the food. If we can introduce that playing card on top of taking care of the fossil fuels, we got to do that immediately. If we take care of the diet, stop killing the animals and eating the animals, with switch to a starch-based diet, we have a chance of some semblance of survival on planet Earth. But otherwise, we're talking about extinction. You know that. I know you don't want to hear it, but you know that. I'm telling you the truth. So get with it.
Yeah, people don't want to hear it sometimes. Well, I want to share some good news though, because I've been lucky to be in an environment or meeting a community globally that, like us, left the city and we bought a farm and we're growing our own food and we're doing regenerative agriculture. And I see this becoming more and more popular even in the US, and I know it's not highly publicized, and I know that there are some states in the US where they really make it difficult to even grow your own food, which is criminal. But it's happening, and the only problem is that it's not happening at the rates that we want to see, or at the amount of people, that should know about this and do it is probably a little bit lower than we should see to make a very big impact. But it's happening. And sometimes you start something and then this ripple becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So I want to be hopeful that more and more people will understand the urgency, but also understand the beauty of having control over your food, because there is nothing better than seeing your crops grow and knowing where it comes from, and know that it's fully organic and biodynamic, and that, hey, you might share it with a couple of bugs, but it's okay. You're going to eat some really good stuff. So it's happening, and I see that. So that's good news, because we always talk about the bad news, and it's true and it's real, but there is hope. There is hope. I promise you.
Well, there is good news, and that's what my website, McDougallFoundation.org, is dedicated to, is the good news. It has no discussions about how much trouble we're in.
Yeah.
But it has, for example, it has 8, and there are only 8 that I know of. It has 8 scientific papers that claim that we can reduce our global warming emissions, our greenhouse gas emissions, by between 50 and 80% overnight by changing to a vegan diet. Go look at the website at McDougallFoundation.org. You'll see the studies.
Yeah.
I think I have a 9th one to add to it, but I have no studies that say otherwise. So all the papers say the same thing, is we have power as individuals, and you need to realize that. And that's all the website will be dedicated to. It very positive messages about the environment, what we could do to get out of it. I have guests like Dan Buettner, who did the Blue Zones. He's on my website, and Dean Ornish, he's on my website, talking about the environment, and several other very important guests. And they're talking about what, not necessarily that we're doomed. We're doomed. Not necessarily that we're doomed, but what we can do to fight our way out. I'm not willing to quit fighting. And that's my purpose in life, is that I want to make a contribution, hopefully one that makes a difference.
Yeah.
And the only thing I know is how to change your food. And I'm an expert on that. And not only do I know a bit about what a human being eats, but I know how to get people to change. And that's what I spent my life doing, from writing 13 national best-selling books to building a food company that's in 6,000 stores across the country. To teaching 4 different universities. I don't know whether I'm still, but I was a clinical professor at 4 different universities, and trying to teach people. The programs we run, I've told you, we run a hospital-based program, we ran a resort-based program, and now we run a telemedicine-based program, where wherever you are in the world, we can teach you. We can take care of you medically, help you get off your drugs. At our telemedicine program, which is at drmcdougall.com. You can find out about that. So my contribution is to help you make a change in your diet, because nobody else seems to be doing it, not on a grand scale. You have Al Gore. Al Gore is the guy who woke us up and introduced the inconvenient truth to us. And so we thank him for that. But he never mentioned anything about diet or food in his documentaries. We have the World Watch Institute that told us that 51% of the greenhouse gases come from animal agriculture, but they didn't tell us what to do. We have the FAO report from the FAO Food and Agriculture Organization report, FAO. Mm-hmm. They published in their paper, 400-page long paper, that 18% of the greenhouse gas emissions come from the animal agriculture, but they didn't tell people what to do. We have the Eat Lancet Commission, which is the most important organization today about diet and climate. They didn't really ask you to change your diet seriously. They gave you out. You can eat a little animal foods. We don't want to make you feel guilty, and they didn't tell you what to do. And then we have Bill Gates, who just wrote a very important book about the climate, who told us that all things must be considered. Anything that could possibly help save the planet must be considered. And he gives his interviews on 60 Minutes and CNN News at his favorite burger shop, eating a cheeseburger. They're not telling you what to do. Nobody's telling you what to do. Well, McDougallFoundation.org tells you what to do, how to do it, gives you the recipes, gives you everything you need, gives you the reasoning. It gives you all in a very succinct manner.
Well, it's because you're not sponsored. You're not sponsored by industry. I mean, we have to be realistic here. I studied politics now 20 years ago. A lot of my peers that were in the class with me, international affairs, they went into working at FAO, the UN, and they all say the same. It's like, look, we do a lot of studies, but ultimately we have sponsors, and we have to make sure that we don't piss them off. That's the reality. Yeah. So you're going to say, well, we're going to reduce something, but you don't want to say, no reduce. You need to cut it out because this is what is going to save it. If you give people solutions that are in their hands, somebody's going to lose a lot of money. That's really what it is. And you said it before, right? It's about money.
It's all about money.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe. It'd be hard to believe that people would sacrifice you and your family's health for money, but it should be obvious to you that that's been done.
Yeah.
Cigarette smoking, alcohol consumption, and now rich foods.
Yeah.
And rich foods are the most destructive of all the bad habits I can think of. You can even roll the bad habits of cocaine and heroin and tobacco and alcohol together, and they do less harm than what the food does to you and the community and the world. So yeah, it's all about money. It's the world banks. It's the fossil fuel industries. It's the food industries. But you know what? We can beat them.
No, yeah.
They're not all that important. I mean, they're just individuals that are greedy. We can beat them. In mass, we can beat them. We have the communication tools.
Yeah.
Little instruments here. We can. 88% of people have one. So come on, let's get together. Hey, we only got one home. We only got one, and it's at a point. They call it a tipping point. It's past most of the tipping points. We have one small chance of saving anything for you. It's not just your children and grandchildren. We're talking about you. You are going to suffer hunger, devastation. You're already suffering wildfires and droughts and floods and hurricanes. And it's in your lifetime, you're going to see a lot more that you never expected. It's not just your kids and grandkids that you have to worry about. I know. That's going to be a long off, going to bother me. Well, it's going to bother you. So get with it.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. It's yeah, you're right. Spot on. Amazing. Well, let's talk about. Let's end with something that you love. So I know Mary is a very good cook. I heard in many interviews. So what is the favorite thing? I know you like burritos, but what's her favorite thing to make you?
Oh, well, of course, we've been together. We just celebrated our 50 years together.
Congratulations. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's, it says a lot. It says a lot about, a lot of things. They've been great years, to say the least. Anyway, as far as our home goes, we eat real simple. We eat the same things over and over again. And you do too. You should. I mean, you go to a restaurant, think about it. You go to a restaurant, you order the same thing off that menu every time you go. You're monotonous in your eating. So in our home, what we do is we have oatmeal with fruit every morning for breakfast. I happen to like frozen fruit because it doesn't collect flies and it doesn't rot. So I have frozen fruit, which I thaw, and oatmeal every morning for breakfast. And then for lunch and dinner, we have the same things. We have mushu vegetables over rice. We have fried rice, which is not done with oil. We have sweet potatoes and broccoli. That's one of our favorite meals. Baked potatoes. We have that with a dressing over the top. And the dressings we pick are store bought often. Some of them that Mary makes, and that makes a huge difference in enjoying your potato, your rice, or so on. Like there's a new mango salsa that I just discovered. Oh, makes everything taste really, really good. So, find a few things. But if you don't even have to find a few things. You can live on potatoes and water alone. Once you understand how complete the food is, you stop worrying about it. industry created this fascination with getting a great variety. So you got to get everything. Well, you got everything. You got diabetes, you got heart disease, you got obesity, you got hemorrhoids. Yeah. Realize that all large successful populations who walked this earth got the bulk of their calories from starch. They ate monotonous diets. They had corn for breakfast, corn for lunch, corn for dinner. Rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's what they ate. Don't make a big deal out of this. Find something you like and just eat it over and over again. So that's we eat simple. We eat the same things, and once in a while they change. And I'd encourage you to do the same. You get to eat as much as you want. You'll lose weight. Your diseases will go away. Those caused by diet will go away, except the permanent damage. There's some permanent damage left.
Yeah. Well, can that permanent damage maybe not be reversed? But if it's
you stop making new damage. Just like my rheumatoid patients, they have come in with crooked joints. They go, I'm not all better, doc. Well, excuse me. These crooked joints happened 3 decades ago. They're not going to straighten out. Or if you had a heart attack and lost a piece of heart muscle, it's not going to grow back.
Yeah.
But you won't have any more heart attacks. You won't have any more inflammatory joints. So you decide you're going to stop it in the progress it's in. You just put beside the things that you lost. You lost them. They're gone. Get over it. Get on with it.
So with your program doing telemedicine, are you involved in seeing patients, or is your team that does that?
Well, no, I actually have doctors who work for me, but sometimes they'll share with me the patients. In other words, if the patient needs some extra attention, they ask me to get involved, and I still get involved with people. I've taken care of 12,000 people myself. I've touched them. I've talked to them, 12,000 people. And I've trained other doctors to practice this way, but I always supervise. It's called the McDougall program for a reason, and that's because Dr. McDougall is in charge. But there's a lot more to it, and more every year. You'll be amazed. Just put in John McDougall in your Google search and see what comes up.
Yeah.
I'm shocked by how much comes up these days.
Yeah.
And almost all of it's good. We have our naysayers out there, the people who would, how the world is.
Hey, you can't please everybody, but it's okay.
Yeah, but I think you'll find that the vast majority of information is very positive because it always works. You always get better. If you're sick from dietary diseases, you stop what's causing the problem. It's just like if you had a bad cough from cigarette smoking. What would happen if you stopped smoking?
Yeah.
How often would it happen? It's just plain and simple is going to happen. You're going to get better. Same thing if you're drunk and you're falling down all the time. It's going to happen when you give up the booze. Come on now. You can figure it out.
Absolutely.
It always happens. And the same thing with your dietary diseases. And far, far greater than 90% of the problems people suffer from in Europe, in the United States, and now in Asia and Africa are caused by eating rich food. You eat like kings and queens, you look like kings and queens. You're obese, you've got gout, you've got diabetes, the traditional diets, traditional problems with royalty. It's just so obvious. It just, it begs to be dealt with. It begs for the world to change. Hey, come on out there and help us, okay? Help us spread the good news.
We will. And we'll put all your links in the show notes so everybody will have access to it. But I think that you have so much to share that we're going to have you back on to talk about some more things. Especially, I heard that you were very interested in gut health. That's been a big subject. So perhaps we can talk about that next time.
Oh, I've got a whole bunch of stories to tell you.
I can't wait. I cannot wait. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Thanks so much.
Thanks for the opportunity, folks. And like I say, we have a world to save, and it's well worth it.
Anytime. Bye. Thank you, Dr. McDougall, and thank you everyone for staying on for this great episode. Dr. McDougall has got so much to share, so he will be back on The Green Life to go a little bit deeper in other topics of health that he's seen in his practice. And I think this is how we learn, right? Through the experience of people who really are keen to share so that we can learn and take control of our own health. So if you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed the podcast, please, as always, rate, share, review,